tough shoes to fill, and knowing that I'm the only thing between you and your Kiss cocktails in 20 minutes, I should get straight to the point, shouldn't I? Well, here it is. By 2020, China will be the bespoke centre of the world. Thank you very much. No, let me tell you why. There are 4 key drivers for this. They are shy, which is a cultural phenomenon which I will explain in a little bit more detail later, increasingly educated market, widespread counterfeiting, and accessibility to brands. Widespread accessibility to brands. Now this is underlined by the notion of the self and the Chinese version of self-expression. And primarily this is actually achieved through 2 ways, through brands and through social media. Allow me to rewind. Back in 1978, which we've heard already, when Deng Xiaoping opened China to the West, he really started a revolution of sorts. And in just 35 years, we've seen a renaissance, we've seen an industrial revolution, and we've seen a huge change in the country. We've seen this image already today, but here is Pudong skyline back in 1990, and again today. Just one of the examples of how this change has actually manifested itself here in China. Now, just 30 years ago, China was very much a state-driven country based on the principles of equality, of community, of the individual working for the greater good. Now, fast forward 30 years to today, and we're in a very different situation, where with the liberalisation of industry being privatised, with the entrepreneurial spirit of the Chinese people, we're seeing social stratification in new and interesting ways, social groups forming, where once it was a little bit more of a level playing field, some people are more successful than others. And we see these people breaking away from the pack. We're also seeing another trend, and that is the urbanisation of China as well. See here, this is the population spread, gravitating towards some of the key urban centres. Now what does this mean? This means that tens upon millions of people are driven towards a more centralised and a more competitive environment. Much more competitive, where they're exposed to brands, and they're exposed to Western brands as well, Western lifestyle, Western culture. This means they have access to choice like never before. This choice is also aided by an access to information like they've never had. So they're making more aware, more informed decisions. Now if we look at some of the trends that are going on at the moment, depending on which figures you look at, we have anywhere between 100 to 300 million Zhongchan, or middle class, here in China today. Now that figure is expected to grow to almost half the population of China within the next 10 or so years. Now this is pretty amazing. We know this already. But what this means is that over double the population of the US will be middle class, will be consumers with disposable income, consuming brands. But on top of this middle class will be a wealthy class as well, which is already there. Current estimates put there at about 1 million US dollar millionaires here in China today. That figure is changing every single day. And on top of that wealthy bracket are the super wealthy that are redefining a new tier of lifestyle and level of existence. Now what does this mean? This means that increasingly Chinese people are looking for opportunities to express themselves, to show who they are, to show where they fit into the social mix. They want to show their success, they want to show the fact that they've worked hard and achieved. Their self-expression comes in different ways. It comes through the watch you wear, it comes through the handbag that you carry, it comes through the car that you drive, and even the tea or the coffee that you drink. Brands are very much an opportunity for people to make a statement about who they are. This self-expression is really important. Now, this is the same in the West. There's not a lot of difference here, but what is different, what is interesting, is the zealousness, the drive towards acquiring these brands. You hear stories of some people that will work for 2 to 3 months to buy a handbag, to buy one article that they can actually say, hey look, this is a statement of who I am, I've got that bag, I'm successful. And there are some other disturbing examples of this as well. Just recently in Anhui, a 17-year-old teenager actually had a kidney removed for 22,000 RMB so he could buy an iPad 2 and a few other bits and pieces. And an issue that caused a bit of an uproar online and social media and through the press here in China is this case of this girl here offering her virginity for an iPhone 4. Such is the power of brands in this country. Such is the appeal that brands provide people and the ways that they can express themselves through brands. Now, I know these are isolated incidents, but it's telling nonetheless. What is also interesting is the fact that traditionally, and still is the case, China is very much a savings culture. It's not based on capital. It's not based on credit. But it's about saving and earning and being somewhat risk averse in that nature, making sure you save for a rainy day. So why is it that people are spending so much money, and they are spending more money than the West? For example, with the luxury taxes in place, the price of the Louis Vuitton bag here is far more expensive than in Europe. So why are they spending so much money on these goods? It's about Mienza, it's about face, it's about what these goods can actually offer the consumer as a way to stratify their position within society. But it's not all brands that offer this. It's only the brands that are visible, those that provide the visibility. Let me give you an example. I was just recently, for Christmas, I went to France to visit my sister. And while I was in Paris, I went to Galeries Lafayette. Now, this is the LV store in Galeries Lafayette, and you can see here a line of Chinese consumers ready to spend thousands of euros on their LV bags. Now, what is interesting is the fact that most of these people would have flown there in economy class or coach class, and they're probably staying at a very affordable hotel, not 5-star, as you would expect, because you don't see the seat in the plane that they were sitting in. You don't see the hotel that they stay at. What you see is the handbag they carry. It's the visibility of that brand that gives them that face, that Mienza. Similarly, Häagen-Dazs, here in New Garden in Shanghai. Now, consumption rates of Häagen-Dazs in public spaces is far higher than that in private. You can take little takeaway buckets and eat them at home, buy them in the supermarket. Sales are quite low compared to this. Why is that? It's the ascribed value that eating Häagen-Dazs in public actually offers you. It's a statement about, hey look, I can afford Häagen-Dazs, I'm successful. A friend of mine works for Porsche, and he was telling me about a story which is not an isolated story. That a gentleman bought a 911, drove it for about 2 or 3 months, and the car started behaving a little erratically. Couldn't figure out why. This guy went to the dealer, was furious. So I've spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of RMB, billions of RMB, on a car that is not performing properly. What's wrong? So they checked it, they gave it a service. They found that he was actually using very low quality, low octane fuel, which is full of impurities. This is a high performance car, and he's saving a few RMB by putting the cheap petrol in. Why was he doing that? Because no one saw the petrol he was putting in the car. They saw the car that he was driving. It's about the visibility. That's where the premium is. Finally, Starbucks in China, $5.70 for a venti latte, $3.70 in the US. Why is this? It's the perception. This is an aspirational brand here. This again is that stratifier that says, hey, I can afford Starbucks, I'm doing okay. So, if these are some of the ways that people can express their personal worth, it's one of the tools they use for self-expression, then how else do they express themselves here in China? Well, I think one of the trends that's been emerging, if we look back again, China is a vastly different place today than it was just a few years ago. We have very much a basic country with basic systems. Now we have huge infrastructure, the fastest magnets. It's an amazing country, the newest airports, the most impressive buildings, 3G connectivity, people connected to the internet, and I think this is something that's quite amazing. Now, I built this chart, and there are actually 3 on here. There's 1997, 3 years after the internet came to China, there were 620,000 users. It doesn't even register on this scale, because now we have 520 million, and by next year it's predicted to be 700 million people online. And to give you an example of how many that is, if each person held each other's hands in a daisy chain, it would wrap the earth 18 times. That's the people that are online here in China. Now, why is this? What's going on here? Well, social media is definitely one of the key drivers here. In a recent McKinsey survey, they interviewed people in tier 1, 2 and 3 cities, and of the people they actually interviewed, 95% had a social media presence. They had an account online. Why? Why are there so many people in social media here in China as opposed to the West? I mean, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, and it's popular, but social media here is far more popular. There are a few drivers behind that as well. It's the separation of families, which has been touched on today. The fact that we have migrant workers moving away from their homes, we have people moving away to study, people setting up businesses, that urbanisation, people moving towards the centres that want to keep in touch. We have affordable broadband internet. It's quite cheap here. We have internet cafes everywhere as well. We have a one-child generation that wants to be connected, wants to communicate. And quite interestingly, we had this share of voice. Just a few years ago, you had to listen to your parents, listen to your school teacher, listen to university, listen to your relatives, listen to the government, listen to everyone, but you never had a chance to actually say your piece. Well, now we have a platform where people can share their opinions, they can share their beliefs in new and exciting ways and connect and reach a wide audience. Sina Weibo is the one that's emerged to be the victor so far. Over 300 million people online, give or take a few million, depending if you count the zombies or not. But that's a lot, and that's a lot of people connected. And they're expressing themselves in really interesting ways. You know, it can be emotional outlet, it can be to show off their intelligence, it could be to show off their awareness, or it could be just funny. For example, you have Kim Jong-un, North Korean leader, nice bit of makeup and hairdo, again made up to look like a Chinese official with the comb over. My favourite, lesbian goth look. And the many hairstyles as well. I'm sure I saw this girl on Nanjing Road just yesterday. So people are expressing themselves online in interesting ways as well. Well, that's just funny, but they're as funny and important. Now, these are some government ministers from Beijing. And you may have heard this story, the floating ministers, the floating officials. And you see they're kind of levitating off the road here. Now, this picture was put on an official government website. It's showing them inspecting a new road in their county. This is the mayor and a couple of his boys inspecting a new road. Now, when the photos were taken, they didn't like the quality of the photos, so they thought, well, let's Photoshop it and make it look a little bit better. So they did, but it didn't escape the eye of the Chinese netizen. Here we have them on the Death Star, well, actually near the Death Star. One's consulting with Lord Vader, one's doing some very important work down here. And great Photoshop job for that. So while this is funny, this is actually quite telling as well, because it's showing that just a few people, through some clever use of memes here, are able to say to the government, hey, we're watching, you know, so you can't pull tricky tricks like that on us anymore. And this happens on a much more serious level as well. Social activism is becoming quite a topical concern here, with just one post having a ripple effect that can spread far and wide on social media. In marketing terms, this is IWAP, internet word of mouth. So it's an interesting way of expression. So what happens if we take brands as a means of self-expression, and we take the platform of social media and the internet as a means of self-expression, and bring these two forces together? We get a unique cultural phenomenon known as shy. Now, shy is basically buy it and show it. Okay? We have shopaholics that are posting their wares. They go shopping, take photos, they post them online and say, hey, look at what I've got. Now, this happens more in the 18 to 30 year bracket. It's not in the more senior bracket, but this is a showcase of, hey, look, I've achieved, I'm successful, and I'm sharing it with my friends. You have brand fans who are specific to a brand. Here's a Hermes collector showing off her handbags. And to prove that they're legitimate, she's even showing the boxes. Okay? We have fashionistas, or fashionistas, excuse the typo, I was on at 2 AM this morning. These people are trend spotters around the world looking for the latest in design, the latest in fashion, to really see what's going on there and then communicate that far and wide with all of their friends and the wider community. This is rich content that is being shared. And we have the style gurus. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called The Tipping Point. And in it, there are 3 factors. One of those factors to create a phenomenon is a maven. Mavens are the experts, they're the knowledgeable people. Style gurus are the experts. They're the ones that share their knowledge about products, share their knowledge about brands, and share it wide. Here's a post about a couple of watches, Iris and Roger Dubuis, which was retweeted 42,800 times, and it's just a simple little post about the design features of particular watches. So what do these factors do when they combine together? They're creating an educated market, rapidly becoming a very educated market, to the point where Chinese consumers are probably more brand savvy than their Western counterparts. More aware, more tapped into what's going on a brand sense, certainly to my friends in Australia. None of my friends in Australia are paying attention to brands to the extent that's how the local consumers are. Let's add another factor to this, and this is brand accessibility. Massive growth throughout 1, 2 and the 3rd tier cities. For example, Burberry, there are currently 63 Burberry stores in China. They're looking to expand to 100 into the other tiers. Same with Louis Vuitton, same with all of the brands. There are massive expansion plans going on. What's this doing? Well, this is taking exclusivity away from these brands. It's making them far more easy to obtain. anyone in any city can go to the local shopping store and find luxury brands, premium brands, quite easily. Add to this the counterfeit trade. Well, we all know what this is, and we all know the prevalence of this. Just down the road you can go and buy an LV handbag, and a pretty good copy as well, very cheaply. You see them everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And here's one netizens saying, to be frank, there are too many counterfeits of LV in China, which does not make me look good, even if I carry a real one. So what is this doing? What is this doing to these brands? It's an interesting question. Well, what it's doing is it's breaking down the walls of exclusivity. So those with real money, those with this desire to show off their worth, to show what they become, to show their success, are finding it increasingly more difficult to do so. How do they do that? It's no good carrying the LV bag and the Chanel glasses and the Gucci and the Dior, because everyone else is doing that as well. We have people spending beyond their means. We have accessibility. These factors that I've listed here. We have more of an educated awareness. So, what's this going to result in? Well, we're going to see an increase in niche brand consumption. We have this self-expression that's going to become more individualistic. Chinese people will want to break away and show that they are a connoisseur, that they're more of an educated consumer than the standard. So niche brands are on the rise. Experiences for the existing brands. LV, Hermes, all of these guys have to stop relying on the product to do the selling, and they need to create an interesting brand experience. We have people shying products, or people shy lifestyles. They'll say, look at my lifestyle, look at what I'm doing. I've got access to exclusive events. I have access to these amazing experiences that most people can't get. This is happening now and will continue to happen. What we're also going to see is more customization, much more customization, to appeal to the individualistic tendencies that is increasingly becoming the norm here in China, moving away from that collectivist notion that Ed Hofstede would have us believe, moving towards more of an individual self-expression. So how does this customization come about? Well, in different ways. Luhu, Land Rover, very popular brand at the moment. Here's a bespoke Luhu. Imagine what if you could go to a Luhu dealership that wasn't a dealership, it was more like a tailor, where you could feel the fabrics, you could look at the paints, you could check the accessories, and you could customize your car to the tiniest degree. You could even have a video link with the designers in England saying, this is what I want to do, and they will give feedback and suggestions about what would work and what wouldn't work. This is going to happen. What if Shanghai became the next Savile Row? We know the South Bund fabric market. I bought this there. This is tailor-made. My shirt is tailor-made from the South Bund market. What if that stepped up to the next level and became more of a premium experience? What if we had high-quality tailors producing high-quality goods at a fraction of the price what was produced over the rest of the world? What if this again was tapped in to the virtual online world and people anywhere around the world could order their own custom outfits and get them shipped that week? Nike ID, it's happening already. What if this idea of designing your own shoe was extended to other brands and incorporated artists and other ways for people to create their own custom products, to separate themselves from the pack? What if Apple and Samsung set up design labs in their flagship stores where you could create your own Apple in its own colour? And I'm talking about a third-party add-on or a third-party modification. I'm talking about an Apple-certified custom-created phone. What if Swarovski had a bring anything concept where you could bring your product in to Swarovski and they will cover it, bedazzle it for you, rather than going somewhere else and doing that? What if Chanel had a perfumery where you could mix your own scents? You could create your own fragrance, put it in a Chanel bottle and say, Chanel presents your name. What if Tiffany had jewelers in the store designing your own custom piece, your own special ring? This is something that will set you apart from the masses. What if you could custom design your education? What if you could pick exactly the degree, exactly the outcome you wanted for your children? This is already happening to some extent with concierge services and travel experience. We have the Affinity Group here in China. We have Quintessentially, we're providing these lifestyle experiences. What if we extended that concept to every touch point in your life and created custom experiences? Well, it's my contention that this is going to happen. This will happen. And if it's not led by the leading brands, the LVs, the Hermes of today, if it's not led by them, you can be sure that there will be other brands, other niche brands, other enterprising entrepreneurial companies stepping in to fill that void. because there is one thing for certain: the individualistic tendencies of Chinese consumers and the need to express themselves in new and interesting ways to stratify their position within the society is becoming increasingly the norm. And that is why, by the end of this decade, China will be the bespoke centre of the world. Thank you.